Classic Restos is proudly brought to you by Shannons, where you can sign up to be a member of the Shannons Club, your local Holden certified service centre, Pace Farm the enjoyable egg, and Heron Forbes Machinery House, where you can buy online. G'day, I'm Fletch and welcome as I bring you to Junee in New South Wales. The old gasworks behind us comes with a lot of history, and there's a pretty tidy car collection in there as well. And you're about to see it in this week's Classic Restos on the road. An original building and an eclectic collection of mechanical devices on the inside. This is the old gasworks here in Junee. As a railway town, the economy here today bears no reliance on the rail as it once did. However, the rail history here is amazing and it's well worth a visit. Check social media pages for more information about the rail history here in Junee, then try and come out for a better look. Here at this building, gas was once made for street lighting at the turn of the 20th century. There are over 30 of these gasworks around New South Wales, with the last one being decommissioned in 1980. Today, in this classic railway town of Junee, New South Wales, this iconic building has been preserved, now home to the Gasworks Garage and Museum. Roger Moore is the man, and although no relation to the James Bond character that most of us grew up with, Roger has rich history here in Junee, being born and bred here. His father commenced Belfast Motors in 1953 and it became a Ford dealership in 1965, where Roger spent most of his working life. It's pretty cool, isn't it? An old once-was Ford dealership in a lovely little country town, once belonging to your father. Not many can say that. So before we see a little bit of Roger's collection, a very nice 1983 ZK Fairlane has arrived, belonging to a couple named Ken and Helen that I thought you might like to see. Welcome to the show. How are you, Ken?
Good, thanks, Fletch.
Thanks for coming along.
It's good, mate. No worries.
Now, the reason I thought I'd feature this Fairlane, this is an interesting time, isn't it? This is when they had dropped, Ford Australia had dropped the Cleveland V8, the 302 or the 351. Of course, the famous 4.9 and 5.8 badges that we're all so familiar with, and in favour of the 4.1 EFI. Now, interesting story with your car going down the line. Do you want to share that with us?
Yeah, apparently it was going down the line. It's got the big diff in it, it's got the gearbox, and apparently it must have been lined up to take a V8, and they'd run out of them, and this was one of the very first with the fuel injected.
Yeah, it's interesting when you talk about the gearbox. Now, they traditionally ran Borg-Warner 35s behind the 4.1s, so a C4 box in this car?
Definitely a C4 that's in it.
Wow, that's interesting. Well, there you go. There's something that I've learned. I didn't think C4s ran behind the 6s in the early 80s. That's an interesting concept.
Yeah, it's got the traction lock diff in it.
Yep.
Which they run in the V8s.
Yep. Wow, what a time, hey? And another thing too, Ken, to see a Fairlane like this is getting very, very hard now. There might be, a few that have been pretty well a bit ratty today, but to see one as nice as this, it really does stand out. The paintwork's beautiful. Is that the original paint?
It's all the original paint except for the bonnet, because it had gone off on the bonnet.
Yep.
And we repainted the bonnet.
These are a great model, they really were. Having driven XDs and XEs when they were brand new cars, and they did really drive well. The Falcon always had that traditional road feel that was present throughout their models. And interesting transition with the V8 ending. And I think when these Fairlanes first came out, the shape of the dashboard, as opposed to the Falcon, how they extended it horizontally with your controls in there, and they were just a a brilliant looking car, weren't they?
Yeah, they're a beautiful cruise car. Like this one's got the sunroof and that in it, and it's absolutely a beautiful car to drive.
Yep.
You know, it's only got low Ks and that on it.
Yep.
And to get it out on the open road with a sunroof, it's like driving a convertible. It's absolutely beautiful.
And of course, too, sitting on the station wagon wheelbase, a little bit of that 100mm, that extra bit of length there just before the wheel arch in the rear, and allowing that extra piece of glass behind the back door too. I always thought that that was a very nice touch.
Yeah, it is. And the old Fairlanes, you know, if you're travelling anywhere, you can always load a big lot in the boot because all Fairlanes have got a big boot, and that's what people sort of grab them for that.
Now, you're travelling around with your wife Helen. What some of the places that you've been?
Oh, we've been Mackay, we've been the bottom end of Victoria, around through central Victoria. Yeah, we've been to quite a few places and that, and that's what we, you know, I'm retired now, and that's what we're getting out enjoying caravanning, and it's been really good.
Interesting too with the Ford Australia commercials. Remember the Fairlanes being promoted around the Flinders Ranges. My good friend Mark at Shannons knew the owner of those Fairlanes in those commercials, and that was honest advertising. That was a real guy living in the Flinders Ranges, and it always had Fairlanes.
Yeah.
And with the Australian conditions, and more so then, you know, the dirt roads around Flinders Ranges. What great publicity for an Australian car.
That's right, yeah. The rough roads of Australia, you don't feel them in these Fairlanes. You've got the long wheelbase, you know, all coil suspension and that in them.
Yeah.
And that,
Or the Watts Link.
Watts Link, yeah.
Even today, that's one of the best rear ends ever designed. They're a very good rear end, the Watts Link.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, Ken, been a pleasure.
Thanks, Jess.
No, you're welcome. Fletch.
Yeah. Take care, Fletch.
That's all right. It came out a little odd. I don't think he's had a couple of beers at this point of the day. Anyway, it's been a pleasure. And when you let go of my hand, it'll be even. Thank you very much for coming along, mate.
You too, mate.
All right, and
you take care.
Sharing the Fairlane with us. All right.
What does this Fairlane mean to me? It brought Kenny through a very hard time when he was very sick, and the car means the world to me, as he means to me. I love the colour, I love the sunroof, and to get out in the open road with it is fantastic. It's good, it's automatic, it's easy to park, and it's easy to do things with, and especially to go down to the shops and do the shopping with. So to say it's a testament to Ford, how it is in the 40 years it does rattle and squeak, but it's a fantastic car and I simply love it.
We've always had a few cars. They're all special. The Tbird.
Oh, that's mine.
The Combi for when we want to get away. The XR8.
It's going to be a classic.
They're all insured with Shannons,
We've also got Shannons Home and Contents cover.
which helps protect our automotive collectibles, tools and memorabilia in the home and garage. If you're motoring enthusiasts like us, it's got to be.
Shannons.
Shannons Insurance for motoring enthusiasts. Call 13 46 46 for a quote.
When it comes to cars, there are some brands that will remain with us forever, no matter what. The Holden was always Australia's own car, held high in the hearts of many. Those lines, that chrome, the stories around them, and the people that owned them. From the classic through to the final, you can still trust in genuine Holden and AC Delco parts, available through the Holden Certified Service Network. Have a look for your nearest Holden Certified Service Centre at holden.com.au, and let's keep supporting Australia's own. Moving on as we do, time now for the star of today's show. How are you, Roger?
Well, thanks, Fletch.
That's good, mate. Good. What a place this is.
Thank you.
It never gets boring. Every time you visit, there's always something different to have a look at.
Yeah, it's a great place in Junee.
Every morning you get up and this is where you go to work, right?
I do.
So what's the story? How did you acquire the building?
I didn't actually. We rent it. And the chap over at the licorice factory was using it. He's like me, doesn't throw anything out. So I spent 12 months cleaning it out and then started bringing the cars down, which I had in the old Chrysler dealership up the road.
obviously a Ford man through and through. You've got some very special cars here. You've got 4 of the early Falcons from XK through XP. Nice to see a tidy EH down, or EJ down there in the corner, should I say. But also, you've thought outside the square. Not only do you have an appreciation for all types of different vehicles, but lawn mowers. You've got a great array of mowers on display. Those old Victas, wow, they're really something, aren't they?
They are indeed, and we're very fortunate to have the first model.
Yeah.
The first model Victa over there, which I had never seen before, and it's got a fan on top. The chap, when he was 16, that designed the fan, came in here as a 94-year-old not very long ago. Wow. He told us the story about it, and when he bought, he talked his dad into buying the mower off Victa when they first came out, and Victa rang him up to say, "How's the lawnmower going?" He said, "Good, now solved the overheating problem." And Victa said, "What do you mean by the overheating problem?" He said, "Oh, when the paint was blistering off the cylinder, it had stopped." So because he was an apprentice electrician at a big electrical company, they designed a fan and put it on top, and Victa copied it for the first model, which we now have in the collection over there.
So what year are we talking?
1953.
1953. And also too, the lawnmower being responsible for the Victa ward in most hospitals too, Roger.
Yes, that's a very interesting story. You did need a whippersnipper back in those days, and we had a chap in here the other day that laughed and said he'd been to the Victa ward and took his shoe off and showed me his big toe cut off.
Yeah.
So he spent time in the Victa ward.
Yeah. Mowing lawns with the old push mower on a Saturday afternoon on the beers.
With
thongs
on.
Yeah, it's not the best thing to do,
No,
is
it
it?
isn't, no.
Roger, behind us we've got an exceptional car, a 1966 XP Fairmont, obviously being 66, just about to transition into the XR. Being a Fairmont too, Super Pursuit 200 engine in front, an original car, never been detailed. Hey, I'm telling the story here. This is a beautiful example, Rog.
It is indeed. Mr. Walster bought it off Dad New. We have a brochure there where the price was worked out in pounds and the receipt was written out in dollars, so it was just at the changeover. The Walsters had a foundry here in Junee, and they have a famous cannon actually up at the museum. Mr. Walster lived to a ripe old age of, I think, 97, and was still driving the car well into his 90s.
Good ages, a lot
Lovely.
of these guys in these country towns. It's wonderful. In all its exuberance, sitting here, unvacuumed. You could have given it a vacuum, Rog, but hey, look, we'll look past the floor. It's just a complete car.
It is, indeed. We love driving them, that's why it's dirty.
And I don't know what it is.
Sorry about that, Fletch.
That's all right, that's all right. I don't know about you, but every time I see the front of an XP, I don't know, I'm just reminded I'm waiting for Leonard Teal to step out, you know?
Yeah, no, it's a wonderful, wonderful example. I think it's only done about 63,000 miles.
Yeah, wow. And back in the day too, having a brand new Fairmont in 1966 with the Super Pursuit engine, although they came standard with these cars. Little things too, like the courtesy lamps. There's one above the handbrake and one in the back as well. A little bit of cutting edge technology for Australian cars back then.
Yeah, and you really do notice the difference with the 200 Pursuit motor when you've driven the older ones, and especially when you've transitioned into the Fairmont from the base model.
Yeah, I had an XW wagon years ago with a 188.
Yep.
And look, you know, it was a very basic car. Drove really nice though, but you know, it was nothing real ultra dynamic under the right foot. But it did what it had to do. But I can appreciate XP lighter body with the 200.
Yep.
It would have been fairly sprightly.
Yeah, lovely.
Yeah.
Lovely car to drive.
Now it's never had paint. Original car. It had a wash today. It's just probably
Get a wash today.
the first time it's seen water in how long, Rog?
It's that time of year when they're burning off and dust and everything, so thought we'd better be half presentable for you, Fletch.
Certainly, you never fail. The brochure up on screen now, that original 1966 brochure from Ford Australia, displaying the Fairmont and the ride up there, brochures. Wow, to look at this one, the condition is just beautiful. A letter from NRMA way back in those times when it was a different company, and saying that Mr. Wall was a member since 1929.
Mr. Walster was, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. 1929, and on the court event window there, you'll notice he went through to 60 years as a member.
Yeah. Yeah.
First became a member in 29, membership number 782.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's quite something to be a member for that long.
A lot of tradition, a lot of people with tradition attached to that era, didn't they?
Yes, they did.
Stay right where you are, because after the break we'll be back here with Roger, because we have another very special Ford to show you on today's show.
Like Dad, I've always been a Ford man. The Falcon Squire wagon was unloved in 1964, but turns heads today. The Americans call them Woodies, but the panelling, it's just fiberglass and plastic. But it's a passion that Shannons understands, which is why my Fords are insured with Shannons. And now, so's the home.
Call Shannons on 13 46 46. Shannons, insurance for motoring enthusiasts.
They may not be making the classic Holden anymore, but the legacy lives on. You can still have a Holden certified service using genuine Holden and AC Delco quality parts at over 180 centres across Australia. Go to holden.com.au to find your nearest centre. Book your Holden in, maintain the pride. If you're after some laid-up insurance cover or some information on insurance in general for your classic, why not pick up the phone and give Shannons a call for a quote and a chat on 134646. And keep in mind too that the Shannons Club awaits you as Australia's largest automotive online hub. For more information, visit shannons.com.au. Welcome back. How iconic is this car? 1915, it's a tin Lizzie, the last of the brass. Roger?
Yes, last of the brass. They made 15 million of them.
Is that all?
And it's
15 million?
15 million, yeah. Henry
Incredible.
didn't think you needed another model motor car.
Yeah, yeah.
And
What an incredible car. We're looking at a 2.8 litre four-cylinder engine, which is a massive displacement for four cylinders. No wonder they were torquey.
Very torquey.
But even today, these types of vehicles can go down ditches, out the other side, where a lot of conventional rear-wheel drive cars, front-wheel drive cars cannot go. They were very versatile, weren't they?
They were, and after doing 4,500 on the Birdsville track, 4,500 kilometres, I had new appreciation of the metallurgy of the chassis, how they'd bend and twist, and they just walk up and over and down through gullies and bumps. And
Okay, in this segment, more so than talking about the actual vehicle itself, it's done something very special that a lot of cars can't say that they've experienced. You've just said it, the Birdsville trip. Now we've got plenty of photos of the trip. Tell us overall how it performed and how did that trip go, Roger?
yeah, the trip went very well. On a big day we'd do 200 kilometres, and on a day where the going was a bit rough and a bit hard, you'd do about 80 kilometres in a 6-hour day.
Wow.
You'd stop fairly frequently for morning tea and lunch and afternoon tea just to give the body a rest.
See, 200 kilometres in a vehicle. Now, we still had people using horses when these vehicles were brand new. So it's a big contrast, isn't it? 200 k's every day on a horse in the saddle compared to this machine. Incredible stuff.
We've got a car here that was owned by a gentleman who got his licence in a T model, and he used to drive his dad from South Australia to Queensland to cattle sales. And at night he used to say his dad would look at the stars and say that way the next morning, because there just wasn't any roads back in 1915. And he had his licence for 76 years, but he often talks about getting his licence in the T model Ford. Oh,
they're an incredible piece of history. If you want to find out more about the Model T, search on the Shannons Club for the Paquette plant in Detroit. I've had quite a few tours there and done some filming there, so have a look there on the Shannons Club for the Classic Restos episode. There should be one or two there highlighting the Model Ts built at the Paquette plant before Highland Park, which is the first of the assembly line. Rounding off today's show, we have one more special vehicle out in the car park, and I know it's dear to your heart, Rog, so how about you bring that in next and share that?
Thank you, Fletch. We'll do that.
Okay.
This Zephyr here, my mum and dad's car. It's what we grew up in as a family of four kids, mum and dad, caravan on the back, and off we'd go on a holiday to Bateman's Bay or Port Macquarie. Very lucky to be able to do that. It was a special car in 1971, I think it was. Dad put it around the back in the shed and been there ever since, until in recent times we've just got it going again. I think the Zephyr, when they came out, was ahead of their day. A lot of people said that had them, they went very, very well. And this one in particular has had a few modifications done to it. Weber carburettor, extractors, and Dad being a mechanic, he knew all the things to do to it to make it go a little bit better than the normal. Let's face it, they were a family vehicle, leaf spring in the back. My dad used to say the older cars, they could make them go, but they couldn't stop, or couldn't go around corners very well. But I do remember one particular night when we were only kids and young kids, and Mum was out at Illabo playing tennis, and she couldn't get the car going. So Dad bundled us 4 kids in the car, and we're heading out to Illabo, and I watched the speedo bounce off between 90 and 100 mile an hour. He reached over and turned the dash light out and said, "Don't tell Mum." And I have in my hand here a speeding fine down in Port Hacking Road, Sylvania, for 75 kilometres an hour in a 60 zone. And I found this in the car under the seat. It's got Secretary Police Department with a stamp on it, but the check's still in here, 1975, and Bank of New South Wales. And obviously never got sent, never got cash, so that's a bit of fun to have that. Just reinforce the fact that I think he had more speeding fines than breakfasts. Yeah, my dad started his apprenticeship in Wagga at a place called Westies, Huey West. Back then it was a 5-year apprenticeship, and in his 5th year he did oxy and acetylene welding. And then he was only 23 when the local garage and Ford agency, the chap there wasn't well. So he said to his mate that they used to share a ride to Wagga on the motorbike to work, would he like to go into business? And Don said, yeah, we'll give it a go for a fortnight. Anyway, Dad always jokes about that because 35 years later they were still in business. My dad, when he did his apprenticeship, he won an award for the best apprentice in the state. And consequently at 23 they went into business. That's very young when you stop and think about it. They went into Belmore Motors. Eventually in 65 they became full Ford dealer, and they were there until 1988. Thank you for allowing me to share the cars here at the Gasworks Garage, and I look forward to seeing you here in Junee.
Roger, I love listening to the story of your family Zephyr behind us. They did a pretty good job back in the day. I've heard quite a few stories from senior people, guys a lot older than us, about how good the Zephyrs were back in their day. A 6-cylinder car, an 80, 90 mile an hour car. For what they were, they did do a good job.
Yep, they definitely did, Fletch.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? When you think of the dynamics of the vehicle, and we look at the width of the tyres and the speeds they were doing on the roads that were around.
Doing it.
No, you wouldn't go out now and do it, probably, would you, Rog?
Not at all.
No. All right. Well, look, on that note, I want to thank you so much for your time here today, the invitation to come here and showcase what you've got here at the old gasworks at Junee. It's not my first time here, no doubt it won't be my last either, but if you're in Junee or near Wagga, come on out and see this guy. He does a great job. He says it's his work, but I don't think so. I think it's his hobby.
Yeah.
And mate, thanks very much, Roger. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for coming, Fletch.
You're welcome. Thanks, mate. Well, there you go. That's a wrap for this week's episode of Classic Restos, featuring Ken and Helen's 1983 ZK Fairlane, and of course all the good stuff that Roger Moore gets up to here at the old Gasworks in Junee. No matter where you're from, if you're planning a road trip, come and see Roger. It's only a $2 gold coin donation to get into the place. Helps Roger pay the rent, and your custom will be greatly appreciated. I hope you like the show. Until next week, no matter where you're watching Classic Restos from, please ride and drive safe. I'm Fletch, and I thank you very much for watching.
You can like and follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/ClassicRestosTV and watch catch-up episodes at shannons.com.au.
Classic Restos is proudly brought to you by Shannons, where you can sign up to be a member of the Shannons Club, your local Holden certified service centre, Pace Farm the enjoyable egg, and Heron Forbes Machinery House, where you can buy online.